Hello out there. Once again, we are back. We are answering diesel questions. I'm Zach. He's Billy. You know the drill.
We're this far away from phoning it in.
No. I mean, it's just, I feel like we're starting to see more subscribers come in. People see our content.
Well, and we're starting to see a lot of repetitive questions, which are good. Please don't stop asking them.
No, of course. Like, we want to answer your questions. But to that point, it's ag season. People are trying to get their tractors out, working in the field. And once again, we have another question about timing.
Yes.
That is just an endless fodder for questions and insight into diesel knowledge. So this week, we got to speak with Mr. Byrd, John Byrd, and he had for us an 806 International Harvester, which... bonus points if you can guess this. What kind of pump is it? DBG.
DBG, yes. Yeah. It's and honestly, you know, we could cut and paste the response from the John Deere's that we talked about earlier, the 4010s and 4020s, because it's basically the same timing.
It's a similar
setup.
process.
You know, the internationals are a different animal in other regards, but as far as the injection system, there's very little difference.
Right.
So we went through it with him, you know, hopefully we helped him out.
I still think it's a good call. I mean, certainly while we're in ag season and people are going through the similar set of problems of having to get the old tractor out in the field and suddenly it won't start. You got to get the pump serviced, but you got to get it off properly.
One thing I will say, and this is something for you international owners out there, we find that when we have a problem with AO6 International, it is always a good idea. It's always a good idea with anything to have the injectors checked, but a lot of the earlier model international injectors were a completely different breed.
Really?
And you really want to consider getting those serviced. Mm-hmm. Some of the early internationals had a big injector that was big around as a soda can, and the glow plug was actually in the center of it. If you have those style injectors, you want to get those serviced. And I'm going to tell you why. We can salvage certain parts and recondition certain parts before they're extremely damaged. Mm-hmm. Those injectors are no longer available. Parts are no longer available.
Okay.
And we've had to really, when we get a set in, we've had to work with machine shops and various people to try to salvage these things.
Try to piece them together.
You want to keep those injectors as pristine as you can. You want to use fuel conditioner. When you get your pump serviced, go ahead and get those injectors serviced.
Yeah, good point. So without any further ado, let's take a look at the call.
This is John.
Hey, Mr. Byrd. My name's Billy.
Hey, hey, Billy.
Hey. Called and left a message for you. Obviously, you called back. I was on the phone. My apologies.
It's okay.
You had called in. You have working on a DBG Roosa Master, and there was some questions about timing, and I was see if I could help you.
I've got an 806 Farmall, and I've been told that I've got to put the tractor in time before I take the pump off, so that when I put the pump back on, I've never done this before. I know I could take the pump off because I've watched the video of them taking a pump off. But what I don't know is how to time the tractor.
Okay. Well, then believe me, that's the easiest of all of it. If you can master pulling the pump off, you're golden. I can tell you what to do in order to get it into time.
Okay.
Now let me ask you a question. Are you planning on doing anything with the injectors when you do the pump?
No, because the tractor is actually running outstanding just the way it is.
Okay.
The only reason I'm sending my pump is because I'm leaking fuel on the little stud that comes out the side of the Roosa Master pump and where the throttle linkage and all of that hooks on it, there must be an O-ring or something inside to keep the fuel inside, because the fuel is coming from that little stud.
Right. That's a fairly common problem, and there's actually a steel bushing and an O-ring in there.
Okay.
But
so I don't think my injectors are bad.
Well, the reason I was asking is because if you're going to pull the injectors, you want to do them before you try to time the pump, because you've got to bar the engine over by hand.
Okay.
And you're not fighting compression when you're barring it over, with the injectors out.
Okay.
Because you can't move the engine with the starter. Let me kind of tell you the broad strokes of what you'll need to do, and then you can kind of fine tune it. On the side of the injection pump, near the data tag, there's a rectangular window.
Yes, I know. I've seen it.
Okay, and it's held on by two panhead screws. Now, you're going to pull first off, get the tractor where it's going to sit. So, because once you start this process, you don't want to move the tractor.
You're right.
So you want to pull those panhead screws. Forewarning, fuel's going to come out. Not a big deal.
Okay.
And behind that, you're going to see what looks like round disc, one thick one and one thin one.
Okay.
The thick one has a fixed timing line that always stays in the window. Now, it may not be dead center. That's not a problem. Just depends on where your advance is. But it'll always be in the center of the window. The smaller of the two discs has a corresponding mark on it, but you have to bar the engine over to line those two marks up. Now, I'm going to forewarn you here. The pump turns half engine speed, which means you have to do 2 engine revolutions for one pump revolution.
To get one pump revolution. Okay.
Exactly. Now, you may be lucky, open the window up, it'd be right there, and you just have to move it a little bit. But just be prepared that you may have to bar it over, 2 times. When you get those 2 lined up, your engine is in a known fixed timing position. Okay.
So I watched one video, and it showed the guy barring his engine over, and on this particular model, he had to put it at like 50 degrees. There's a flywheel at the back, and then there's a timing mark, a pointer, I think, or it may just be a line on the case. And once he got that to 50 degrees, it was really close where his pump was in time. So that's what they were talking about.
Correct. Yeah. If you have any external timing marks, you just have to be cognizant of, am I on my number one compression stroke? Because you don't want to be on the exhaust stroke, when you're matching everything up. So to use that method, that's straight out of the engine manual. But generally, you would look for both valves to be up on your number one cylinder, so you knew you were in a compression stroke. Either way you do it, there's only one fixed point where those 2 lines are going to be together. And
that's in that pump.
Right. And then when you line it off, now, most applications of Roosa Master, especially on the farmalls, the shaft stays with the pump.
Right.
And when you pull the pump off, the first thing I want you to look at is look on the end of that shaft, and you'll see a dot, just a round circle, just indented into the shaft. And then you take your pump and you look inside, and you'll see a corresponding round dot where the shaft notch fits into the rotor. When you go to reinstall the pump, you have to mark those dot to dot.
I see. Okay. So there's a dot on the pump.
There's a dot.
And on the shaft that drives the pump.
Exactly. And there's 2 drive shaft seals. They'll come new ones with the pump after it's serviced. You don't want to try to reuse those seals, because when they get exposed to air, they fluff up, they get distorted. But
Okay.
but for timing purposes, if you can line up the 2 lines in the timing window, you are in time at that point. You can go ahead and remove your pump.
Okay. And so what you're saying is pull the injector so that there's no resistance when I bar it over.
Well, that's a call you'll have to make. I mean, if the injectors come out easy,
these are not going to. They're not going to.
Right.
So, I mean, I know how to take injectors out, and I tried to break one of the lines loose, and it was turning the whole line. And I'm afraid I'm going to break lines if I try to get the injectors, even the lines off of the injector, so that I could pull the injectors.
Right.
I'm gonna have to find a way to get the tractor close, and then I guess the tractor, I'll have to try to find a way to bar over from the flywheel to get the thing in time. So,
well, again, that's why I was asking, if first in our conversation whether you were going to do the injectors, because I agree with you. Pulling the injectors just to bar it over is probably you're trading one set of labor hours for another. So
right.
You're not really saving. There's no benefit. But if you were a lot of customers, they're servicing the injectors while they do the pump, and in that case, you want to pull those injectors first. Just to make life
but it
easy.
is possible. Is it possible to bar the tractor over with the injectors in it?
It is.
It's just more difficult.
You just need some leverage. You need a big pull bar, and if you've got a healthy son or grandson, get him out there and just say, hey,
okay.
But yeah, it's done all the time, but when you bar it over and you get that in the window, then you can get it set and lined perfectly, and then, like I said, you're off to the races at that point. It's just a matter of pulling the pump.
So when I know where to bar the engine over, but I don't remember. Do I pull down? Do I wedge the bar in the flywheel and pull down, or do I push up?
Well, for purposes of this, you could do either.
Either way, okay.
What I would, if you have any indication on your flywheel that like the timing indicators, what you talked about, to make life as simple as possible, set it close to that, and don't worry about pulling your valve cover. Valve covers to see if your number one's up. Just pull that timing window. If you don't see the mark at all, chances are you got to turn it one more time. Okay. But kind of use that as a reference area. That window is about an 8 degree. So, for barring purposes, if you get it close on the flywheel, chances are that line's going to be in the window somewhere.
In that window.
And you just want to bar it just a little bit forward or back to move that line. It's a 2-man job. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, somebody's got to pull and somebody's got to look. But unless you're way ambidextrous. But once you get the lines both in the window, it's just a matter of lining them up. And then obviously don't move. Don't let anybody hit the starter. I would go ahead and disconnect the starter.
I actually pulled the switch off of it. I'm replacing that one gauge that's got the water temperature sensor in it, and I'm replacing the switch because when I bought this tractor, it didn't even have a switch. A guy was jamming a screwdriver into the switch and turning it that way. I've ordered from Brillman's a switch and everything, so I have it all disconnected.
Okay, well, you're good then.
Okay.
But yeah, I saw the salesman sent me a note say he sent you some links. I'm going to confess, he sent you a link to an automotive. He was trying to help, and I wish he hadn't have. I would disregard those.
I have. Okay. I saw right away, this is not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So
my apologies for that.
It's okay. It's okay. I went to Google. I went to YouTube, and actually, I've watched 3 or 4 of y'all's videos on YouTube, and then I found a really good one where a guy was actually doing this model of tractor. And now, speaking with you, I understand perfectly what he was trying to say. He wasn't as well spoken as you are, but now I understand exactly what he was trying to say.
I don't get accused of being well spoken very often, I can tell you that. But yeah, it sounds like you're spot on where you need to be. You know, I would, like I said, just get those lined up. If you have any questions in the process, this is my cell number. You can call me. Obviously, like you called earlier, I was a bit on the phone, but
it's okay.
But I'll get back to you. And like I said, if you have any questions, and we'll
now what? So if I understand right, all I've got to do is pull the 6 banjo bolts off the side of the pump, and there's a cover on the front of the engine. I take that cover off, and then there's 3 bolts in there that holds. There's a kind of a spacer deal, and it bolts the pump back to the shaft, and there's a 15/16 nut on the shaft, and you don't touch it. You leave it alone. And then the pump should basically come out.
That is correct. Yeah, there's 3 bolts that hold it. Now, one thing we didn't, the static timing, the pump has those oblong holes so when you go back to put it, you can move the pump itself to line up those lines. But
right.
They're going to be fairly close. Now, I will say, just be mindful of those banjo bolts. 2 things. One, they break really easy because they're hollow. So
right.
Don't they're a fine thread, and if you break them off, it just makes for a bad day.
Right.
But and then you're going to get new washers when the pump comes back to you. But but there's washers on either side of those banjos. So
right, there's one on the pump side, and then there's one on the bolt side.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And those washers, will the washers need to stay with the bolt?
Not necessarily. Matter of fact, if I were you, I'd keep the bolts and of course, I'm an old mechanic. I don't throw away anything. I kind of set everything to the side. You're going to get new washers, but the bolts, I'm not getting new bolts. You won't necessarily get unless you want to order them separately. They don't come with the pump. And there's but you just want to be, when you're taking them off. Now, if you want to inspect them, you want to make sure there's no cracks, there's no distortions. They're pretty durable. As what usually happens to them is they get twisted off. If you've got a can of WD-40 the night before you're going to do this, just spray the back of that pump. Just use way more than you think you should.
Okay, I've got some good penetrating oil. I'll get some on there.
Yeah, that'll help you, and then from there you should be good to go.
Okay, sir. All right. Well, I'm going to get this thing pulled off of there and get it on y'all's way.
Okay, sir. Well, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to call me.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care now. Bye.
Timing. It's always going to be questions
all about timing.
Yeah. So we hope, Mr. Byrd, we were able to help you get your pump off. We look forward to having it sent in so that we can service it. Also, if you have an international tractor, make sure that you think about servicing your injectors as well as your fuel injection pump. As always, if you have questions about your diesel, you can reach us at 1-800-961-9290 to schedule your very own tech call. You can also find us at www.dieselcare.store for all your automotive, industrial, and agricultural diesel needs.
Sounded like you've done that before.
It's getting pretty routine at this point.
Okay.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Yes, I'm built out and bound to go. I'm gonna leave here running because walking is most too slow.
to one.